understand that we had been worrying about different viruses in the computer systems, machines. Companies were worried for getting their data stolen or any type of risk to emerge. 2020 has given us a scenario when a human virus has again raised the concern of such type of risks which emerge from viruses. Cybersecurity is a key concern, and so we thought of organizing a panel. I'm here with my team from ISCA, and we are constantly working under ISCA leadership to bring you the best for your constant engagement, interaction, and enhancement in the proficiency levels. Now, if you allow me, I would like to introduce our two expert panelists for the day. Mr. Shivarama Krishna. He's an advisory partner in consulting practice in PricewaterhouseCoopers India, having a deep passion in cybersecurity issues and leads the cybersecurity practice vertical with PwC India. He has, to his credit, more than 25 years of experience working across various global organizations and various countries in diverse sectors, and having an experience in working with government, BFSI sector, FMCG sector, energy sector, oil and gas sector, infrastructure, healthcare, etc. Mr. Krishnan is actively involved in NASSCOM's Cyber Security Task Force. And apart from this, in PwC, he also leads the product and service platform vertical, which contributes further. If I introduce you with Mr. Krishna Shastri, he is currently working as partner cybersecurity consulting with Ernst & Young India. Prior to this, he has worked in multiple profiles, and I would like to mention a couple of important ones. As an executive director with Cybersecurity Service Advisory PwC, as principal consultant and global head on digital forensics and fraud management with Tata Consultancy Services, and 23 years of long association with Directorate of Forensic Science with Ministry of Home Affairs, Government of India as forensic scientist, and handled a large number of cyber forensic investigations. He has examined more than 1,400 cases involving digital evidences referred by various state and central investigation agencies. He is also having, to his credit, expertise of offline and online digital forensic investigations, cybersecurity breach, red team exercises, threat hunting, incident response management, and so on and so forth. His association with Ministry of Home Affairs and Ministry of Communication and Information Technology, Government of India funded projects on cyber related issues has contributed well. He had been also associated with Interpol as a subject matter expert and a trainer, and has trained extensively the law enforcement officials of more than 95 countries in Asia, Europe, and Africa. He has a number of awards to his credit, and if I mention Union Home Minister Award for Meritorious Services has been conferred to him in year 2004, is one of the prominent ones. Sir, I would like to welcome you both, Mr. Shastri and Mr. Shivarama. And as we go with the format of having the initial discourse of 5 to 6 minutes, we would like to hear from both of you in terms of your perspectives as to how cybersecurity has really landed into the boardroom. Because I remember when long back, 25 years back, when we started our career, information technology used to be a department, and information technology officer used to be there at a very junior level, which gradually grew up to a level when cyber concerns were identified. And organizations created a position of chief technology officer, chief risk officer, looking at those aspects. And gradually it has, suddenly landed into the boardroom, taking the sleeps away of the board of directors and discussing various aspects from 360 as to how cyber, specifically when we are more oriented towards business models which apply digital technology, e-commerce platform, and our business models are more oriented usage of more internet and cyber related utilities. So first I would like to invite Mr. Shivrama Krishna for his initial discourse. Shivrama.
Inside the left-hand side corner.
Okay. Hello, could you able to hear me? Good afternoon to all of you. It is a great pleasure and honor to be as part of the panel. And cybersecurity has been apt for these days, in particular, with a number of news articles culminating about various attacks and compromises and frauds and losses which the organization sees. And while it's easy for us, for many of us, to get too much worried about it, but I just thought maybe it's a good idea for us to simplify what goes behind and how do we go back and manage that better from the corporate and organization's perspective. Shastri will enumerate number of examples of attacks and the investigations that has come out of it. But if I want to sum it up to find a solution, what are the kind of events that we have seen, where it has emanated from, so that it's easy for us to build the kind of solutions as an independent director that you can, ask your board companies to act on it. If traditionally, when the events that have started in terms of cyber crimes in the past used to be, for most of them used to act for just for the fun, about 10, 15 years back. So people wanted to enjoy, challenge themselves up, and then they try to do something and they find some gaps in the systems, and that has become their source of happiness. So they share, they worked on it. There is no economic impact in many of those cases, whether what you've seen in viruses, etc., in the past that has come out in those days. Then came in a situation where people have started organize themselves, and when that started happening, it may not have an economic impact. A lot of the people have started doing it for disruptive purposes. And whereas today, the third evolution that we are seeing is that there is a clearly laid economic interest for people to hack and penetrate and compromise. There is a parallel economy available for people to use compromises that has happened. So clearly we know that this is not anymore accidental actions or technical intended action. This is more organized, perpetrated, perpetual attempt to hack into the corporate or institutional infrastructure to gain economic benefit out of them, whether directly or indirectly. There are ransom calls that they place it on the companies, or they sell it the dark web to claim it, or they support enforcement agencies in a geopolitical situations and so on and so forth. But having said that, if we understand the mode of actions from a cybersecurity standpoint, then it makes it easier. And traditionally, when the initial first set of action that used to happen, and the systems in a corporate were also very simple. Companies would have had some ERP, maybe sometime they do EFT payments, etc. But it's all one is each of the company infrastructure isolated. So there is no connected network impact of any gap that you identify in one organization to the other. So the overall impact is lower. It's isolated. But over a period of time, we instead of one ERP, we started having multiple ERPs. We had internet. we had a customer interactions, integrated supply chains. So then you start seeing a huge number of variety of systems that are being connected with each other. Fundamentally, we all need to understand that these applications are prepared by the technical professionals for a given purpose. The purpose is not necessarily to misuse it, but use it in a constructive and organized manner. If I want to give an example, we build a car to drive on a road to reach another place safer. The reaching safer into the other destination just not only dependent on a car, but also dependent on a driver and the intent of the user and owner and so on and so forth. If somebody puts a bomb in it and they drive the same vehicle, it can get destroyed. But the destruction is not only for that car, but that guy, but it's all of surrounding. If I use the same analogy here, we built a technology systems to deliver certain expected results, but that system we start integrating outside of this design ambit. People are start creating connectivity. Many times you are talking about interfacing one application to the other, and so on and so forth. When you start doing it, there are gaps that is emanating out of those systems. So most of the attackers today using those gaps and weaknesses first to penetrate into your internal system. Thereafter, the native weaknesses of any technology that you use. So if I wanted to give an example, so any attacker that he comes into your network, any your corporate network, the first pry they attempt to do is the end users. And generally, that is the weakest link in any of the corporate organizations. So first attack is that they send a phishing mails. Many of you would have heard people are receiving, even many of you would have received the phishing mails asking for some relevant information and so on and so forth. If they start sending, and if there is one user that was getting compromised, then that becomes an entry point for them. Anybody who comes into your system as a valid user, you trust. Based on the trust, you start providing accesses to them. Once he has an access, then he tries to escalate. He tries to masquerade himself to gain larger and larger access. So once he gains enterprise admin access, finally, then he is able to do many activities. So most of the attacks that we see, in fact, we did attempt to collate last 100 odd large cyber incidences that have happened across the world. About 94% of them, 94 incidences have happened, finally started from the individual's compromise. It ended in a major, admin compromise for a data leakage or a financial loss. But the starting point was an individual who has been, either induced through the phishing mails or social media activities and so on and so forth. So the value chain for attacker is first the weaker users, then comes in, if I have weaker user, it doesn't mean that, one can get in. Unfortunately, as I said, our systems are designed to interface with the multiple systems, and the interfaces are always not perfect because each application is undergoing a change. In parallel, the second application is not undergoing a change. It means that there is a gap. So there is a systemic gaps that exist between two systems which they use. I mean, if I want to give a classical example, many of you would have heard, is a Punjab National Bank's case. It's primarily the interface and the control that has been defined between two interface systems that got misused. So something similar happens quite often in the technology area. So the second thing that comes in is that the gap that exists between two systems and the control that they establish. And the third thing that works for many of them is that these attackers are not anymore overnight intruders into your system. Many of them come into your system and stay in your system. Hello? Yeah? Sorry. Stay on your system for months together, understand and learn what is happening in your organizational infrastructure before taking any action. So the third thing which they do is that now they know internally the process weaknesses in the given organization. Just to give an example, in Malaysia, people know that if I do a transaction in US on Friday or a Thursday night, it means that it's a Friday morning in Bangladesh. Bangladesh was closed, so no action will happen between Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and only the Monday they can take an action. Even though Sunday Bangladesh may be open, but the next transaction leg may not be active on Monday. So they know that Sunday, they know that there are 3 days available. So they identify a process gap to act on it. So in nutshell, what I'm trying to say is, it is not technology that they misuse to really penetrate. They identify technology weaknesses, but they actually identify the process and the people gaps. That's what they misuse to penetrate onto the system. So in a given organization, the challenge is just not limited to the technology that you use. That is one component of it, but the larger challenge organization is to address: how do I fix the people awareness gaps and the people preparedness gaps? And then second is, how do I fix the process gap that exists within the organization? How much do I know the interfacing that I've done in multiple systems, and what risks it emanates out of those organizations? So if you wanted to have a better solution to address this perennial problem in cybersecurity, our focus needs to be, one, on people, number two, on process and its related controls, number three is on technology interfaces that I've built and the gaps that emanates out of those technology interfaces. And this is, I will put it across to address the challenge. Over to you, sir. Dr. Gupta, over to you.
Now I can see. Yeah, thank you so much for very comprehensive, thoughts as an initial remarks, which really sets the tone and helps us, igniting the minds through a couple of the threads which emerges out of your talk. May I now request Mr. Shastri to share his initial discourse?
Thank you, Dr. Gupta, and very good afternoon to all of you. I'll be thankful to the association for inviting me to share my thoughts. To go, what was the board's perspective as far as the cybersecurity is concerned. So let me go here. It is a very simple point. What are the trends I observed based on my almost 29 years of association with various cyber attacks? So hope I'm audible to every one of you. I'm audible?
Yeah, Shastri, please continue.
Okay. The point number one, what I observed is the attacks are getting more sophisticated, because the purpose of this is just to show you what was the gravity of the situation. So based on what roles and responsibilities the board is going to have, I can have a discussion. But let me go what was the trends, what I observed to make you to understand the gravity of the situation. So still I remembered way back in 1990s, when a virus used to come, it used to infect my computer system, the computer system of, for example, a Bhabha Atomic Research Center and a computer system of a bank. But in 2000 onwards, I observed a different trend. If a virus was specifically written to a banking industry, it never used to impact my house computer system or a Bhabha Atomic Research Center. It was specifically crafted and drafted and targeted only to the banking or any financial industry. But from 2010 onwards, what is the new feature I observed? A virus that was trying to attack an X bank, if I brought the same virus and drop it on another bank called Y, it won't impact at all. It means attackers have become very good precision with them. So whom to target, what they want to achieve it. So that is why we used to call them as something called as advanced persistent threat attacks. We call it as APT attacks. So attackers have become, remember, a very, very sophisticated to choose the target, whom to target, how to get the things out of that. The second, what we observed in almost the 3 decades when my experience is, who is the threat actors? I remembered in 1990, I used to read it in a newspaper, a 15-year-old boy has hacked some organization's website and written a nonsense message, etc. So we popularly call it the web defacement and all that. But as such a 15-year boy, we used to call them as a script kiddies, is now completely transformed into today. It may be the intelligence agencies or it may be the national support actors. Like Mr. Shiva, my friend, has explained earlier something called the ransomware infection. You all might have heard about in the last 6 months how many Indian organizations really got impacted with the ransomware. If you look at one statistics, it's going to be very surprising for you. For every 11 minutes, one ransomware attack is happening on any registered entity in the entire world. It means any company who got registered with any of the stock exchanges is getting impacted. For every 11 minutes, please remember, one organization is getting impacted. So here, if you look at is why this is happening. For your information, you are all aware, ransomware is a malicious program which will come and encrypt the data. And you'll see a message asking for something, pay the money in the form of a Bitcoin. If you don't pay the Bitcoin, remember money, we are going to leak your entire data into the dark web website. That is how they are going to threaten us. But I'm not going to call that as something called the ransomware. I would like to call that is something called revenue generation malware. Today, ransomware has become a revenue generation malware. Some rogue nations in the world are getting their foreign exchanges on the basis of, remember, only by encrypting the computer system of other nations, right? Organizations, you call it as anything. So today, the threat actors are not a 15-year-old boy. It's a group of criminals and a well-organized nations are really supporting that one. And third, most important from our side, what is happening? We know almost all our organizations have become an inorganic growth. We never thought of, remember, this much, remember, rapid computation will happen. We never thought, remember, how to bring in so many organizations. The most important problem we are facing today is we are losing control over our own infrastructure. It may be because lack of proper understanding of the technology. If X organization is implementing a technology, I would also like to move for the same, for the benefit of some profit or to lure the customer, whatever it is you can call it as. That's where the biggest number of breaches are really happening. Hope you might have seen the last 3-4 months, Big Basket has been breached. JustPay has reported a few days back. You look at several places, Bharat Matrimony has been breached. A ransomware attack has happened on India Bulls. It is all reported in the public media what I'm talking about. Same is the case with the Religare Insurance. Now, if you look at the point is here, we are losing control over infrastructure where a large number of attacks are happening. And it is coupled with the geopolitical situation also. Hope I don't know how many of you aware. During the Galwan Valley clash happened between India and China, a large number of cyber attacks were also targeted against the Indian government organizations as well as the non-government organizations' websites. So geopolitical situation, and the worst is today cybercrime has become a highly matured industry now. The one estimate says by 2022, you can expect it is going to be the third largest economy in the world of $3.8 trillion US with a perfect supply chain management. Like my friend Mr. Shivaz explained about the Bangladesh attack that is really targeted, you might have read it popularly called Bangladesh Cyber Heist. If you look at almost in all the cases where the cyber attack has happened, the SWIFT system of the banks, the money is going in, landing into the hands of the drug cartels. Is the drug cartels are really involved in these acts? The answer is no. The drug cartels and the money launderers are hiring the hackers, hackers are hacking the banks and transferring the money. For every 100 crores, they may be charging some 10 crores or 15 crores. But the point I would like to say it, cybercrime has become a mature industry with a perfect supply chain management. So who is behind the attacks has become very, very difficult to prove it because the greatest gift of internet called as anonymous is also sometimes becoming a bad burner for us. So it's not possible to identify what was the place from where the attack is really coming into that. So that was a scenario on the backdrop. If you look at it, per day 7 lakhs of new malwares are coming and hitting the internet. And the same 7 lakhs of malware, if you look at is getting hosted from more than 260 websites. So as a customer, as an organization, the end of the day, again people with cybersecurity is a myth, it can never be a reality. So that is what people have learned it. I cannot have something called 100% protected system. That's where even organizations are moving from a good cybersecurity strategy. What is that strategy? Earlier we are adopted is protect the system. If something happens, detect it. then go for the response. Now they realized, since 100% protection is not possible, the best is remember how fast you can detect, how fast you can respond, based on that, how fast you can protect, so that the attacker cannot whole organization. That's why earlier cybersecurity strategies, protect, detect, respond, has been completely converted into detect, respond, based on that, go for the protection. So that's where I would like to say cybersecurity is similar to corruption. It can never be remembered, eradicated, it can be only mitigated. So the number of cyber attacks can be only mitigated. You can never have a 100% foolproof computer system. If that is the backdrop, so what is the real risk that is involved in that is, remember, cybersecurity is no longer just the responsibility of the IT departments of the organization. So the board of directors are ultimately liable and responsible for the survival of their own organization. That means that boards must take an active role in the cybersecurity. Please remember this point, because the risk that are really involved is not only the financial risk, not only remember operational risk, the technology risk, the reputational damage, etc. You have read it in the newspapers also. A cooperative bank operating from the Pune has got impacted with a cyber attack and they lost 94 crores of rupees. You can think of a cooperative bank losing that much amount of money. The same attacks are happening. Today, data breaches have become very, very prevalent, and several countries have come out with the data privacy laws. If any customer data or any data got breached, the liability ultimately lies with the top management is one of the biggest issues we are facing it. So there is a lot of reputational risk, there's no doubt. Financial risk is there, legal risk is there, compliance risk is there. But how to identify all these? Without an effective oversight and accountability, an organization's cybersecurity governance systems, policies, and procedures can be rendered meaningless, leaving the enterprise vulnerable to attack. So this is my main point I would like to say. Just as the boards are charged with overseeing the company's financial systems and controls, they also have a duty to oversee the company's management of cybersecurity, including the oversight of appropriate risk mitigation strategies the organization is adopting it. What systems were in place, what processes were in place, and what controls were there really to mitigate that type of cybersecurity risk. So this is my initial thought process. Please remember, today the liability lies with the top management. We are going to discuss also about especially what are the regulatory risks that are involved, what is the legal and compliance risks that are involved here. So the ultimate responsibility, liability for survival of any organization, if you look at is, lies with the board of directors. So that is my initial thought point. Over to Gupta sir for taking it forward.
Thank you, Mr. Shastri, for setting the tone for the program. And towards the end of your discourse, the point which I would like to pick up, yes, you have shared concerns on how this area has evolved as a field which we all need to be concerned about, and we need to place efforts in terms of learning, considering the element of risk. I would like to add, for the benefit of the session, as we all were reading during the pandemic crisis, when on the one hand we were facing the human virus, there was 5 to 7 times the cyber attacks have been reported and came into media. So as working from home tendency is increasing, there is our workforce, our data, our systems, because people are not working in a very secured environment and working from home, contributing to the company in terms of processes by logging into various ERP and other online systems and getting exposed to the cyber attacks, which has increased a new dimension in terms of a risk which is beyond the perceived risk, as you have very well mentioned, in terms of reputation loss or finance loss or loss of operations and so on and so forth. As you understand, and we all appreciate that we are having the group of independent directors with us, having substantial experience working in various fields, and some of you might belong to the class of technology. What do you think could be the perspective of, I would like to throw this question, the perspective in terms of learning, specifically for those who are not from the technology background? What key points should be considered so that interventions could be placed as a appreciation of this sort of risk and offering some alternatives or solutions. So may I come for a response from Shivrama? Sir, can you unmute yourself, please?
Now, the control is somebody. Sorry for that. I think very aptly put by Mr. Shastri. I would put this, if you want to address this in non-technical manner, I would put it on 4 basic foundations for us to understand. Based on that, we'll be able to decipher what actions one could take on. The first fundamental thing is to really look at it. What are the tactics that the cyber criminals are using it to attack or penetrate into the corporate network? If we largely look at it, I'm using some of the data from Verizon's data breach investigation reports, easy for us to correlate it. There are largely 5 buckets of tactics which they use. The first tactic is hacking. People tries to penetrate into a corporate network, either using known facts or the gaps and vulnerabilities that exist. In generally, most of the companies, any system that you develop, there is something called default setup. There is a default user, default administration, default setup. And many times some of the companies tend to avoid reconfiguring the default passwords of the administrators or default configurations and so on and so forth. That becomes a source of hacking. Second source is more than this good people's network, where the information of how to protect passes, a bad people network of communication is far stronger. Just to give you an idea, any compromise that happens in anywhere in the world within 6 milliseconds gets broadcasted into that network. It just takes 6 milliseconds for me to know that some system has been hacked, and that is a mechanism through which it has got hacked. So vulnerability identification and dissemination, etc., it happens on 6 milliseconds. So it's much, much faster than it's as fast as a telecommunications voice channel that operates. So that hacking is one channel. Second is the errors, because inherently, most of the time when a companies buy a system and implement and establishes, there are errors in the way they configure the system. Very recently, only today, you would have seen in the newspaper that 2 of the automotive companies' source codes have been published from the GitHub into the open world, primarily because of errors. So, people erroneously configure cloud and so on and so forth. So, 1/4 of the tactics that gets used by hackers are errors. A third is social attack, which I talked about, phishing and other things. And then the 4th is the malware. 5th is the misuse. These are the 5 tactics people use across. So, which is not necessarily a deep technology driven. It's primarily driven based on network of communicators, network that they've created to share and jointly beat someone or other. So that is the tactic. If that is the tactics, who are those behind the breach? Who are those people who tries to breach it? Because that also plays a vital role for us to define what solution one needs to have. So if I really look at it, there are largely 3 bucketed people. We can bucket into 3 people. One is there are external actors. Fortunately, unfortunately, unlike in the past, the political economic situation has also come into play when it comes to this attack and support, etc. So about 70% of the breaches on which there are external actors involved in it. So the external actors could be a country enforcement agencies. It could be organized crime groups. It could be even a competitors, because I'm good, so I don't mind sharing compromise with others, etc., etc. Third is, so these are the kind of a thing that's happening from external actors. Then comes in as organized criminal groups. While external actors exposes the vulnerabilities and the gaps, but what happens, as Mr. Shastri said, organized criminal groups picks that up and converts that into attacking an organization. So about half of the cases you will find there is an organized criminal group involvement. It may not be full, but half of it. Then comes in is that another 1/4 is on internal actors. So there are 3 actors. There are 4 tactics that we have seen. Okay. So let us look at it. What kind of a characteristics that we see in terms of attack and so as its impact, so that we can think of taking the right decisions. Okay, and how fast one tries to detect. On an average, as I said, in the 100 top breaches, over 80% of the attacks got discovered for far later than over 60 days, later than 60 days from the day on which he has penetrated into the system. So the detection happens after 2 months. So I've come into he has come into my house. He is sitting in my house and enjoying the meal for 2 months, and then I detect, oh, this guy is unknown to me, or he has come in, or he has done something, etc. So you end up invariably you see quite a lot of cases. Our detection capabilities are far slower than the people who have attacked onto it. That's one characteristics. Second characteristics is that if you see 3/4 of the attacks have always happened in large businesses. Small businesses, it's easy for it to escape. Maybe it doesn't get reported. So I may not be able to really say that with the full authority. But in general, that we have seen 3/4 of the attack happens on the large businesses. The third thing which is most important is that there is a huge amount of interest on personal data compromises. Thanks to heightened regulatory attention across the globe, whether it is Europe or US or India, etc. So you see about 60% of the attacks characteristics revolves around breaches. And then the last one is, which is where most of this malware category related and some ransom driven activity that happens is that now if not a personal data, next thing which comes in is availability. So how do I crumble organization from running their business so that either they get into a ransom to pay, or they get into a public nuisance of declaring that they are not available, so the value destruction that happens for the company, etc., etc. So this is the 4 characteristics that we see. So if that is the case, so what are the real motivation? What are the commonalities in all of them is, as Shastri said, unlike in the past, today 85% of the compromises or attacks that have happened has financially motivated. So it's a large chunk is financially motivated. Half of it has got a web application involved. So what I'm saying is that, look, the major chunk, if you're able to address web application, part of it you may be able to solve it. And then about 40% of that has happened based on the stolen or a used credentials, which plays a very vital role. What I'm saying is, whichever the investigation that we have done, one common theme that we have found is user account level compromises. I mean, many of us, all of you, if you really think about it, how many usernames and passwords that you need to manage? How do you manage? Hundreds of them. So either you have common passwords or you have 3-4 and keep rotating. So if you are using, say, 10 applications, currently they're saying you can't use previous 3 passwords. It means that 30 passwords I need to remember. It's humanly impossible. So what we all do is we keep the same passwords in multiple systems. So if the passwords once compromised somewhere, it means that is included in the directory attack. People can use it as part of the guessable password list. So that becomes weaker and weaker and weaker. So what happens is that most of the attackers uses this used or stolen credentials. That is why in the dark web, the stolen credentials for an administrator or a corporate ID is more valuable. So that is getting used. And finally, 1/4 of them uses phishing. So if I see this, the stolen credentials and the phishing, these two put together is 3/4 of them. The 3/4 of the cases involves phishing and or stolen credentials. So now I know what are the tactics that is getting used.
Yeah.
who are the, what are the breaches, how the breaches happens, what are the characteristics of the breach. So what are the commonalities that we find? If you are probably able to do this, once you have this, you can find a solution for a given companies. We will maybe get to the next after the question, but this is how I will frame it up. So it is not that it is unsurmountable issue, but it requires a systemic, process-driven approach at a corporate level to manage it better.
Okay, so thank you, Shivaram, for helping us to understand your perspectives in terms of tactics, which are 5, which you recommend for even those directors who don't have a sound background in terms of their understanding the cyber-related issues or technology-related issues. May I quickly come to Mr. Shastri to understand quickly in brief in terms of his message or his mantras for independent directors, because there are huge liabilities, as we understand, on independent directors while sitting on the board. And I very well understand and appreciate their concerns in terms of their responsibility in view of the present regime. So can you quickly, sir, share a couple of mantras which independent directors could take into account while dealing with such issues or sharing their interventions in the boardroom discussions? Mr. Shastri, please.
Okay. Hope I'm audible, right?
Yeah, that's right, sir. Yeah,
Right.
very much, sir.
So one point I would like to say, based on the attacks that has in today's world of continually reporting a material data breaches, please understand that word very carefully, called material data breaches. Boards cannot claim lack of awareness as a defense against allegations of oversight failures. So this point I make it very clear. I'm also the standing committee member of Reserve Bank of India Cybersecurity. So we know that what is ultimately the cybersecurity framework which got rolled out. We know how the boards were made responsible in the liable. I will try to discuss about in the next few minutes. See, the regulators and shareholders are today increasingly demanding more evidence of the director's attentiveness to a cyber risk. So this is the one feature which I observed it. So based on that, the board duties generally I will try to fall under 5 categories. Please remember, this is what we expect from RBI framework, as well as if you look at the Singapore or Hong Kong or best whatever is the strategies that people are adapting it. So I feel that the board duties generally should fall under 5 categories. The first one is the most important, is having a proper governance. So governance is the most important point. Second point is there should be a proper strategy. The organization where, remember, you are a board of director, there should be a proper strategy of the cybersecurity. Third, there should have a proper risk management should be a component of that one. And fourth is whatever all practices you are doing it, there should be some compliance. And fourth, important as a board of directors, you should also think about it, bringing cybersecurity culture into the whole organization. So these are the 5 aspects. So let me repeat, the governance, strategy, risk, compliance, and the culture are the 5 domains which, remember, the board of directors should think of in any organization where they are working for it. So I would like to say these are the pillars on which our board of directors should take a view about cybersecurity in an organization. So this is basically what I want to say. Over to Dr. Gupta.
Great. So considering a huge risk associated with the cyber issues and yet no room for taking excuses in terms of unawareness towards the regulatory framework or the protection mechanism, whatever is available, if we get exposed to such risk and lose data, maybe because of an external attack or something which emerges from within the company because of any act which is against integrity or ethical practices from the side of employees, definitely we need to develop systems which are more protected, and we could mitigate this sort of risk. May I try to understand, as right from the beginning, the concerns of independent directors have emerged as I have looked at the chat box also in terms of their liabilities, specifically when we look at India. I was reading a couple of reports globally, and I could not find more than 40% of the time cyber security or cyber concerns as part of the boardroom agendas, and still C-suite leadership is yet to emerge if we look at the global practices. If we considering India as an emerging country and quickly marching towards the developmental process, and yet figuring out the skill-based gaps in the boardrooms on critical matters, definitely it is one of the gaps which needs to be addressed. So can we hear from the experts about the regulations available nationally or globally in this direction, which requires an attention of independent directors to understand, so that accordingly the cyber security policy of the company could also be aligned or developed in case it is not available, and some sort of cyber security leadership could emerge. So this time I would like to hear from Mr. Shastri first on this.
Yeah. If you talk about the regulatory consent, I think you are aware financial industry is mature, both financial and insurance industry. So the reason why I'm talking about is, if you look at the RBA is the major one. The second is IRDA, and the third is the SEBI. So these three are the three important, especially I'm talking about as a regulator, but I will come to some other central government organizations also later. If you look at the Reserve Bank of India specifically said for every bank and the financial institutions which are coming under the purview of the Reserve Bank of India, banks should have a cyber security policy framework, and it has to be approved by the board of directors. Please remember, they should have something, it should be approved by the board of directors. So the responsibility and the liability ultimately lies with the top management. It is no longer the IT department. It is no longer the Chief Information Security Officer. It is no longer with the CRO, Chief Risk Officer. It is ultimately lies with the top management is a point number one. Second, by keeping that only, the Reserve Bank of India has mandated all the bank board of directors to undergo for a 2-day cyber security program that is getting conducted. So it is mandatory. All the board of directors should participate and pass that examination, which is they made it as mandatory. I don't know how many of you are aware about that point. That's the point number one I'm talking about from banking perspectives. Second, if you look at is the Reserve Bank of India has also made it mandatory. In case of any cyber security incident happens in the bank, they are supposed to inform to the Reserve Bank of India in 2 to 6 hours. Please understand this point. And that should be discussed, what actions, why the root cause has happened, what was the gaps the bank could identified for that particular security incident. It has to be kept for the discussion of the board in the immediate next meeting. So if there is X-Bank, if there is any cyber security incident has happened, it is mandatory for them to discuss about the board of directors, what was the risk that was associated with them. If that cyber attack is very critical in nature, the banks are also calling the board of directors for an immediate meeting to discuss about this. Please remember, that is the one point I make clear. That's where the regulatory mechanism has strengthened to a great extent. In the case of listed companies where there is a material loss, again, it is mandated to report for all listed companies to the SEBI in case of any cyber security incident. So that is also mandatory. Same is the case with also with the insurance industry. And if you look at from the Government of India organization, hope many of you are aware, there is one organization called Computer Emergency Response Team, that's called CERT, Government of India. It is mandatory to report every cyber security incident that has happened in an organization. It may be private or a government. It should be brought to their notice what was a cyber security incident, and it should be made completely, remember, public exactly what was really happened. So this is as far as the regulatory and the top management concerns. Remember, many banks and financial institutions already started. In every time, remember, there is a board meeting is there, some 15 to 20 minutes, the discussion is happening about the cyber security incidents happened in the last quarter. What are the budget they are allocating for the cyber security? Getting approval from them, And sometimes, remember, one of the board of directors is also taking part in the IT steering committee of that bank. So my sincere request is, on an average, how much amount of money they're supposed to allocate for the cyber security as a best practice is something around 5 to 9%. It's a board should also start looking at the company where you're working is really that 5 to 9% expenditure is happening to secure the computer system or not. Is there any IT steering committees available? Is the board is able to see the IT steering committee recommendations? What incident has happened in the last quarter? And that has been discussed in the meeting or not? These are all the important issues. As far as the legal issues are concerned, because there is some person as I remember has posted some question it is. There is some section 43 of the Indian Information Technology Act, which says whoever receives the data, whoever processes the data, whoever transmit the data should take reasonable security practices. Please remember, I think there seems to be some advocate is also available here, Advocate S.V. Rao sir. I think you can better judge it. The most important is reasonable security practices is the word that was under italics in the law. So whether you have taken a reasonable security practices or not, how can you prove yourself is on the basis of, remember, the best security practices you have implemented in an organization, like somebody has posed a question like ISO 27001, or whether here the board is able to discuss about. So these are all going to help you to a great extent in case of cybersecurity breach happens and it becomes a legal issue. In many cases, we have seen it where international organizations where a breach has happened, what really saved that organizations from the regulatory punishments and the fines is by showing to the court or by showing to the regulator they are following the best security practices. Still the attacks are able to happen it. So, but still we are able to take this much amount of measures to control the systems. So that is what the need of the hour. So the board of directors has a very important role to understand what is happening in your organization as far as the cyber security is concerned. So there is a need. You should be part of the IT steering committee to understand the cyber security incidents. Over to Dr. Gupta.
Okay, sir. Thanks for giving us an orientation about the framework available on this issue. And as we can understand that in maturity curve, I mean, to the best of my understanding, we are not at a very matured level as far as concern and appreciation for these issues are concerned, and it's more of a reactive approach than proactive approach largely. Of course, as we are more exposing us towards internet and cyber related issues and shifting our business models, the concerns is enhancing, and we are progressing in terms of maturity, but yet there is a lot to be done. So may I hear from Shivram his take on this issue?
I would put this into two buckets. One is, do we wanted to have regulations very prescriptive, or you wanted to have regulation directional, but self-regulations emanated out of the directions for us to manage. Second is that within the current regulations, how board of directors can use it to at least pose a question. Generally, if I see it even across the globe, other than the US has got a very prescriptive regulations. Everywhere else, it is directional. We have some bits and pieces of directional regulations being given and provided. But the question is how will we use it to enforce in the field? And then how the board of directors and the others are taking it up to make use of it to ensure that the bank, the government, the companies improves its posture in terms of security. In general, I mean, we all know that no organization is interested in doing something and which exposes themselves for a weakness. So intent of the management is as good as most of the intent of the directors. But sometimes when you do start asking a post of questions, basic questions, that creates an, has a repercussion to create an awareness. Oh, board has asked for it, so let us start drilling a little bit deeper. Because CEO's attention is also limited as much as that he may be interested in spending time on security, etc. So what kind of a questions that you can ask, and how do we create that awareness and interest amongst the management is something that you can do even with the current regulations, while in a long run one could think of having with a better directional regulation for you to manage it better. There are 3 or 4 questions. One question is to simply go back and ask, can you guys give me system outages and our security incidences of last 1 quarter or last 2-3 quarters? If the incidences are coming down, that is getting reported, you are getting comfort that, yeah, something happening. Second question is that what is the time the management or your corporate, the senior leadership team of a company spends to address and understand cybersecurity related issues? Second question. A third question is to really focus on what is the involvement of security professionals in technology changes or a process changes in the given organization, because these days more or less any large change that is happening in the company gets reported into the board in some form and shape. So if that is coming in, if you can simply go back and ask a question, oh, have you thought of cyber, security implications of this change? Then probably that will bring about in issues to address it. So that's the third question. The fourth question that you can really go back and ask is that, is there any kind of frauds that have happened in the past, phishing attacks, or any of them that has resulted, no material, non-material, but at least number of such incidences that gets reported? What it will do is that because you're asking questions, they will start going out and recording and start giving it. Then that will help you to start pushing back what's going back further down and down and down. So there are only 3 or 4 areas for you to address. One is manage the change. There is a continuous change that's happening in the technology space in your entity. So how well are they managing change? What do they do with respect to security? When I talk about change is not limited to or restricted to only technology. It could be processes, etc. Second is, what are the governance practices which the company has established themselves to address it, because that relates to management as well. And the third is that what are the quantifiable measures which they have to determine the posture of security which the company has. Simple questions which you don't need to find a solution, but your questioning will help the management to find a solution themselves and come back and report what they are doing. That will also lead you to add on to further questions. So in my view, you can never reach a perfect regulations, but if we have a little bit of initiative to ask even a novice question, ask for a data, that will lead management to start going deeper and focusing on it, at least to manage themselves better. So that is how I will put it across. I mean, while there could be a large number of issues that we can speak on regulations, but what we have, can we use it as our tool to improve overall effectiveness of security in your organization that you manage? Over to you, sir.
Okay, great. Thanks for hearing from you. Now, quickly, if as I could understand, we are right from sensitizing our participants on the importance of this issue, we have gradually moved on to understanding the points where there is an evidence that regulatory frameworks are there in place, and they needs to be taken care of by the independent directors, even by those who have an expertise on the technical area, in addition to those who don't have sound understanding, and working on multiple issues. Now, with your experiences, because both of you, Mr. Shastri and Shivarama, have extensively worked in PwC and Ernst & Young, and globally also, both these organizations, I could see engaging with the corporations, understanding the levels of their maturity curve as far as capabilities of the C-suite level executives towards having understanding on these issues, as well as creating policies and frameworks so that less data breaches and cyber attacks are faced, and the data could be protected, the information could be protected, because it will not only protect the companies but also will save the directors from their huge liabilities. So with your engagements, I would like to understand for the benefit of our participants as to how do you find the level of maturity in terms of understanding as well as competence in the C-suite executives in Indian firms. So may I hear from you, Mr. Shastri?
Sure. I can say that we are in the transition phase, right? What was exactly 3-4 years back is quite different from today. Because since I interact very regularly with the board of directors of the various banks from the Reserve Bank of India side, I've seen a lot of board of directors are taking very, very enthusiastically all the courses we are conducting for the banks at an RBI institute called, IDRBT, Institute for Development Banking and Research Technology. They are very keen. So I think it will take some time for us to get mature, but I can't say that we are 100%. As I already told you, when 100% cybersecurity itself is a myth, we don't think or expect that we'll become 100% cybersecurity person. But I'm finding that people are taking very good interest really to be a part of these programs, etc. So I think if we start rolling out, I think there's a very, very fair chance maybe in the next couple of years, people will remember what was the importance of cybersecurity and why cybersecurity is a boardroom discussion. Point number one is why today cybersecurity is going to the biggest risk among all the various risks the organizations are facing it. Fortunately or unfortunately, today we don't have something called the Data Privacy Act. But I'm pretty sure about it by next year, once we get the Data Privacy Act, the number of litigations and the number of regulatory fines, etc., are going to become very high. So my feeling is by the time we get, a full-fledged Data Privacy Act in this country, the board should be well prepared, to have a cybersecurity as the most important part of the governance program. If that is the case, I'm pretty sure about it, we can reach the maturity level.
Okay. May I hear your understanding, Mr. Shivrama, as to how do you place in the curve, whether we are in the beginning phase or in the growing phase, as far as the C-suite executives are concerned?
I think, Dr. Gupta, I will put it slightly differently. The change in technology, the life of technology today is 6 months. And the kind of incidences that we're seeing changes every 15 days. So you will never ever get into a situation to really assume that we are mature in any level. Even the so-called mature countries or companies that we thought that are mature and respond, we realize that they are not even as mature as we think, because it's not about maturity, it is about responsiveness. I would articulate this question in two ways. Are we in a better position to respond fast enough for an incident if the incident happens in a given organization? Currently, may not necessarily we are good at it at the moment. That is something that we need to improve. That is why I said those kind of questions that the board of directors asked is a journey towards improving their response mechanisms. So what we really need to worry about in a given circumstances is not necessarily worry about protection, but is our organizations are good enough to respond in case of event? And where do we stand? Probably I will rate ourselves as 2 out of 10 from a response mechanism. From a standard process mechanism, maybe we are 6, 7 out of 10, but it is not useful if you are not able to respond it fast enough. With that is a change that we see. Just to give an idea, India has got largest number of ISO 27001 certified companies in the world. We are the largest by far, but India still is lowest when it comes to incident response. And we do see quite a lot of impactful events that is happening here. It's primarily because of that. So my request is to most of the board of directors is to go back and just to inquire on your companies, how good are they to respond in case of events, and how well are they managing incidences, and so that impact gets minimized to some extent. So that is what we need to do as a country, and we need to do as each of the companies that operates in our economy.
Okay, good to note the point that for cyber risk governance, independent directors also need to, as part of the board, need to proactively come up and raise questions and question the issues in terms of understanding the responsiveness of the company. As you said, that a responsiveness level needs to be enhanced. So with this, I would like to draw your attention to one interesting committee which almost every company has, the risk management committee, and as the law suggests, that focuses not much on the cyber related issues. Of course, risk as a general connotation has been used, not specifically using any specific kind of risk. So what do you suggest how this cyber risk issue could be seriously involved as one of the major agenda point in risk management committee, and how such agendas should be placed in the board with a mix of director having both technical and non-technical expertise. So what is your take on it, Mr. Shastri?
I think someone has started
Mr.
mute.
Shastri, please. Sir, can you unmute yourself?
Yes. Okay. Thank you. The point number one, if you look at it, sir, as I mentioned earlier, at a regular meetings of every board, there should be some 20% of the time, at least 10% of the time should be allocated for the cybersecurity discussion. That's the most important board, I would like to say it. I have seen the organizations where the board takes very keen on cybersecurity. The controls they are implementing is very good, and they're able to secure because there is someone who can able to watch them. That's what really they have to look at it. Point number one. Second is the board should clearly look at a board committee exactly what is getting implemented and what are the various risks that are really associated with that. So board should also have a very close association with the cyber risk committee. I think these are the two pillars on which if you start working it, I'm pretty sure about it, the cybersecurity culture with the organizations will increase and the risk is certainly going to decrease. This is what I observed practically for the last 2 years when I start looking for the various companies. So board should take initiative and spending some time with them.
Great. So I take it as a point that it is very much important improvising the culture of the company, the corporate culture, and embedding it with the risk culture for achieving better resilience. Cyber is one of the serious concerns, and level of consciousness and responsiveness both needs to be increased. Any point from you to add on this, Mr. Shivani?
I think I'm just trying to look at counterintuitively. One of the biggest challenges that we face is that many times boards create a subcommittee for risks, and then it handles based on the thing that gets reported as risks. But my perspective is that every element of organization, whatever they do today, has got cyber risks. That change, every change that comes to you, or every decision strategies which the organization picks up, the question for you to ask is that, is there a risk? If I want to give an example, you are trying to extend a supply chain. Oh, great idea. It improves, value, reduces the turnaround time or whatever it is, or improves, a sales cycle or a production. It reduces the production cycle time or whatever it was. But take a moment. Have you assessed that person, the third party who's connecting to my networks, what impact it is going to have? Would that get covered? Pull that out and put it onto a risk management committee? Many times it does not happen. So risk management committee works on standalone isolation based on the internal audit reports and so on and so forth. My maybe counterintuitively, my thinking is that why can't it be one of the elements for them to assess, like any other? If you're taking a lending, borrowing, you start asking business risk questions, strategy risk questions as a normal process. So can you incorporate some of the questions as genuinely as part of it, ask a management when it comes to cyber risks on any change initiatives? whether it's process, whether it is people, whether it is technology, whether it is investment or whatever it is. So once you start posing this question, then it becomes robust. So the fundamental requirement, if you ask me, is that every board of directors should, I mean, not necessarily, it doesn't need to that you need to impose to have a separate conversation, but anything that comes to you, if I can pose a question, is there a risk that emanates due to or technology or security, in particular because of digital world, cyber security? Can the management articulate that well? Then you will start winning. That becomes part of it even for the risk management committee as well. But in order to go to risk management committee, you need a base framework. Even that many organizations don't have. This will create. Simple question is oh, this is a record, this is a project that you're executing in technology or in your supply chain or you're investing in company. Oh, is it going to generate cybersecurity risk for us? Have you considered it? They should say, yes, we have considered what we have done. No, we have not considered. That's a good starting point. If they said, yes, considered, then has it been taken to risk management committee? Because somebody then look at it, how well effectively it has been considered, executed, and so on and so forth. So there is a gap between what I see from a risk management committees to what is needed for us to manage it better. If that can be bridged by asking simple questions from the board of directors, I think you win the battle, because we have a base framework ready. It is just a little bit of intuitive questioning that is needed for us to make it effective.
Okay. Now moving towards, of course, we'll have a Q&A, and I would be inviting the participants to share their experiences as well as raising questions for the experts to reflect on. One last question which comes up to my mind, as I'm not a cybersecurity expert like you, but like the concerns of C-suits have indicated a very stronger point as to how fast, especially when as a corporate governance academician, I understand and realize that when I look at the Indian corporate landscape, that in taking public sector and private sector together, still we are in a very nascent stage, and not all companies are even using boardroom devices for sharing the agendas in the digital format, and the digital literacy is not so high as far as the directors are concerned. Even if we look at the recommendations which came forward from the Kotak committee and taken up by SEBI in terms of its LODR, of course, LODR has spoken about defining the skill set of the board, and still we are struggling with right set of board composition, where we have technocrats, we have finance professionals, we have professionals who come from research and development, and specifically to having those skills which are more aligned with a particular set of company. So within this, what do you suggest as a final, quick bullet points for Indian companies to ramp up their consciousness towards this issue and preparedness or responsiveness to make organizations more resilient? Of course, we will have to live with this risk, and no one effort can permanently save us from this. As you have rightly mentioned, the technology is changing every 6 months, and some new ways and methodologies are coming. Like in the corona time when Zoom meetings were on, we saw the Zoom bombing and how the online meetings have been hacked, and that had become a great challenge. So quick 3 points on ramping up the efforts from the director's perspective, from the C-suite level leadership on this issue, from boardroom preparedness and responsiveness. So may I come to Mr. Shastri on this? Quick 3 points.
Right. The point number one is if you want to have a very safe and secure way of communication, from working from home to remember board meeting and all. Basically, the point number one you should have is something called, we generally call it as end-to-end encryption has to be present there. So that is the one requirement you are supposed to take care. And all the channels which you are using it for the purpose of communication, the data at rest and the data in transit must be in encrypted format. So this is the one thing you remember. You have to ask your the organizations for whom you are attending the meeting. The second is the devices which you are using, remember, for connecting to that network should be properly sanitized. I've seen it a lot of cases where you got a lot of personal devices on which a lot of wrong applications were there. There is no proper operating system maintenance. There is nothing is called as a proper antivirus on that. That's where, remember, a huge amount of data got leaked. So my sincere request for it is when you are trying to connect to such type of network, the device by which you are connecting it should be authenticated properly. It should be a completely sanitized without having any backdoors or trapdoors or anything that are available. Third is the data should go in an encrypted format. And fourth is the data at rest and the data in transit must be in encrypted format. If you take these, remember, securities, I think that issues will not arise.
Great. Mr. Shivrama, can you suggest us some 3-4 mantras quickly to ramp up if something new you would like to add?
I think Shastri has covered almost all of it. Just to simplify it, I would suggest you to go and ask your management, have you got a secure device? Okay, has it been encrypted? If you have 2 questions answered, if they say it is secure, if you are more interested in how secure it is, you can ask a question, but then most of the things they will take care. Most of the time they let you access from your laptop. You might be doing many things, and including this, that may not necessarily align to the security of your company that you govern, that you are part of, board on which you're a member, or sometimes the mismatch in technology that happens. As I said, there could be a gap between 2 systems that can get exposed, etc., etc. So long as you have a secure device being given, and then if the channels are encrypted, you are, as far as you are concerned, you are safer. There's quite a lot of things the company can do or must do, but they will continue to do as part of their strategy. But these 2 things can potentially help. At your personal level, if you want to do, my advice to many of you is that many of us have a weakness of having a common password. And if you are using iPhone or a Google phone, if you have stored a passwords on your phone, you check. These days it tells you whether this password has been compromised or not. And it gives you a warning sign. If you go and click on the passwords tab, and it tells you, if you have password saved, it tells you whether it's been compromised or not. So if the passwords are compromised, go back and change it immediately. As far as possible, keep the corporate passwords away from your personal. And if you can do that, then you are in a safer space. While organizations may continue to work on to improve overall, because nothing can be said that nothing can happen. Something might happen, but at your level, you have taken adequate care.
Okay. Thank you so much. Now, if you allow, can we open up the Q&A for next 10 or 15 minutes maybe? Can we have questions, Mr. Kundu? Can we take up questions from them straight, or
let us
from
take
the
up
chat
questions.
box?
Let's take questions directly from them. Maybe I will request all of you.
Yes.
Yeah, let's raise the hands, and based upon the time availability, we will pick up a couple of them from there. Please raise the flag. Accordingly, we will take care.
Mr. Kolara has a question, I think. Please come in, sir. Mr. Harshan Kolara Saab, can you please come in? Mr. Kundu, we'll have to give him the access to the audio, no?
Yeah, he's there. He's sir, please continue.
Yes. Thank you, Gupta ji, for the wonderful session. I live in UK, and it is not a question, but for the.
Sir, your voice is not clear.
Now, okay?
Yeah, better.
Okay. Now, this is not a question, but some points may be of benefit to all. I live in UK and submit to European and UK regulators. Serve in few boards as director, independent director. So my points are not necessarily a question. Cyber or information security issue cannot be eliminated, which is going to be existing forever, and like any other viruses, it will be in our system. What, as an independent director, we are concerned is the frontline people who are at the company level. Companies are supposed to implement the robust technology and reviewing everything constantly. As independent director, we will have no role to prescribe. Has to be a security measure. We can only oversee whether that security's efficiency is concerned. Right. Now, coming to the governance perspective, we will still need a larger governance prescription from the regulators. In this connection, I would suggest to go through the Europe EBA guidelines, which is extensive guideline on how companies and regulated entities can manage cybersecurity incidents and cybersecurity issues. Now that gives extensive guidance to every authorized institutions to provide and manage and oversee things. And as an enforcement measure, they insist on every quarterly review report of the cybersecurity, which is extensively covering every aspect of the business. So this kind of practices, in fact, we need to be implementing in India, because in my view, in India, the cybersecurity issues remains in the policy text, nothing beyond. And that is one of the suggestion I have. And about the regulatory sides, everywhere board takes collective responsibility. Whereas in UK, we have a standard system called the senior management functions. SMF has to be approved by the FCA, depending on the skill he brings to the table. So for everything associated with an SMF, like I am SMF for money laundering, if everything related to money laundering happens to the company, I am first charged. I am answerable to the FCA and not the collective board. So that kind of function we are still to implement.
Great, Mr. Kolar, for sharing your insights and providing a very good reference from UK on this. I would request, if you have a question from the panelists, so we can raise, or else we can. There are other members waiting for their chance for the question.
I don't have a question. I have a suggestion that the perspective has to be clear.
Great. So, Kundu Sahab, can we take up next question?
Let's take the next question from Beg Mirza Gule. Sir, it's over to you.
Yeah. Am I audible, sir?
Yeah, yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, my question is also, mentioned in the chat box. As a matter of policy for cybersecurity, should we mandatorily, as a policy, audit the systems that we, let staff use? Devices, I mean. Periodically, should we audit those devices?
So can you repeat the question, sir?
Shastri, if you kindly answer this.
Yeah. Can you repeat, if anybody could address the question perfectly? You audit the systems used by the staff, right?
Yes, please.
Staff of whom, sir? Staff of
the organization.
Yeah. So it is already, sir. If you look at is all the systems are getting used by the staff are audited properly, whether any vulnerabilities are available, and organizations are already doing it. Okay, that's where when Shiva has mentioned about today to what extent. In 94% of the cyber attacks, actually the attack is getting started from the endpoint machine. Basically, they are having a web servers, application server, database. No hacker is directly coming. For example, if you take a bank where some around 5,000 branches were there, today hackers are compromising one bank branch computer system through which they are going to the core banking server and they're making the irregular transactions. So today banks are looking at each and every endpoint. We call it as an endpoint. So even every endpoint systems are also getting, remember, audited properly, whether any vulnerabilities are available, whether any policy deviations are happening. You know, at all the endpoint machines, they are not supposed to connect to internet. They are not supposed to connect any pen drive. Everything got disabled. So all that auditing is already happening at every endpoint, sir. Yes, organizations are doing this already. So
Yeah,
there is
I agree, sir. So sorry to interject. I agree because I have been associated with an auditing multinational organization, and
Okay.
they supply laptops every 3 years, and obviously they audit. Now with the culture of work from home, gaining ground, this becomes more relevant, I assume.
You're right, sir. Because we have seen a lot of attacks. For example, I will tell you the last 2.5 months when I'm investigating, many companies have given 30 to 40% of the IT work has been outsourced. So where the vendors are using their own computer systems. For example, take the very popular bank in India, XYZ. Yes, they are taking a lot of security. But 60% of the work has been outsourced to a vendor. So vendor systems, they have no control at all. That's where hackers are using that vendor systems to enter into that. So there is a need to really authenticate the systems when they are connected to the bank network and all. So if you don't have any control over them, it is going to become a very big issue.
Yeah. That answers my question, sir. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Beg. We'll switch over to the next question from Mr. Ashok Jain. Mr. Jain, it's over to you.
Yes,
Mr. Jain, Ashok Jain.
able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please continue.
It's a very, very good point that there has to be a board-approved cybersecurity policy. But practically what happens that maybe man or machine or processes causes failure of while executing the policy. So how to check those loopholes or the problems of execution of the policy? So my question is that still there are failures in spite of very good policies, and it's still evolving. Cybersecurity is still a evolving issue across the industries. So how to check those failures which comes in the way?
Shiva, would you like to address this?
Sure. I think, sir, I would put in, give a little bit of a contextual reference so that it's easy for us to understand. Generally, if you've seen, if there are any technology gaps that you identify in a system, that gets reported. Once reporting happens, the first major attack happens in 60 to 90 days. But then we have 60 days of time to fix it. So vulnerability identified today, 60 days you get a time to fix it, and most of the time the fixes comes in 15 to 20 days time. So if the organization is quick enough in managing the patches and ensuring that there is adequate watch to update the systems and patches, it works. That's one. Number two is that while that is a known technology related gaps, but there's quite a lot of internal process gaps that happens. People don't follow policies in many times. People share sensitive information cutting across, and some of us leave behind our username and passwords to the secretary. She or he stores in somewhere, puts the stickers, and like this, there could be many such incidents that happens. That also leads to it. The question for us is that can you eliminate all of it? We may not be able to. There are two things which are needed. One is that that is the reason I said one data that you can ask is a last quarter number of internal incidences that gets reported. and then the resolution that they've taken, because that gives you an idea that how many times people complain that, my system is shut down, it has not come up, or people have compromised, or some phishing attack happened and some users' emails have been compromised. If those things comes up, if they aggregate and provide that data to you, that gives you an idea how good it is in the given organization. Then you can go back and ask a question, can you go out and do an assessment of where you stand, what needs to be done, and so on and so forth. So the question goes back to basically asking some data points and questions that will help you to fix it. But audit is not a solution. Audit is going to diagnose and give back a problem to you. And the solution comes in going back and asking a question, management to take corrective actions. That corrective actions needs to be monitored as a governance process. And for that, you can use the data. And you can go back and ask your CISO or a CIO, do you have a data points on shutdowns? Downtime, compromises that has got reported by the end users. Your supply chain, risks. Is any of your suppliers have been compromised? Has that report come to you? So if you start asking question, if the data comes to you, that should be able to give you the directionally how good, bad that company is in managing risks. Audit, then you can use it as a tool to re-emphasize and also get assurance to you that all this going is well. If it's not going well, you can re-emphasize to take a corrective action.
Yeah, it's a very well taken.
Thank you, Shiva. Thank you, Mr. Ashok.
Sir, sir, can I ask one question? In Barasu?
No, please ask questions.
Please enlighten what is the dark web, how far VPN is safer?
Shastri, you want to take on dark web, or if he has gone, I don't mind answering.
Both you can enlighten us.
Okay, let me answer VPN first while Shastri comes on board. Look, any virtual private network is nothing but helping you to encrypt. Shastri mentioned about encrypt in transit or encrypt in storage. Virtual private network is basically encrypting 2 points. Suppose if I am talking to you and your communication and my communication is created as a separate private exclusive channel. Okay, that helps you to securely communicate. It is as secure as your corporate network. If you are the company on which you are operating, the corporate network is secure, VPN is secure. If they are weaker, this can also can get exposed. So the answer to you is, as a technology, it is safer. As a driver of the VPN determines how safely he is taking you to the destination. Shastri, you want to go on dark web?
Yeah.
He's expert, so I will take his help.
Yeah, before that VPN also, sir. So basically, the VPN called virtual private network means where 2 private networks are communicating via public network. So that is a basic simple point. That's the meaning of the VPN. But once you got a public network, there was some issue. How can I relay the public networks through which you are getting connected is a question mark. There is something called routers. You might have heard about it. I don't want to tell. There is some apprehension is happening in the whole world. Particular country routers are slightly dangerous. We are not supposed to use it, etc. So I don't want to tell the name of that and all. You are very, very familiar with that. So that risk was always present. So that is where what we try to do is the second the data packet is going, it means I'm dropping a letter in a sealed cover. Postman is the fellow who is delivering the other office. So postman is a router who is a public servant. So from X office, when I'm sending to Y office, in between postman, there is a possibility he may open and he may read it. No, the postman is maybe our enemy country. I don't want to tell the name of the country, are very familiar. So that is where we are trying to do it is let us encrypt the data so that even postman opens also, he can't read the contents of that, right? That was the basic purpose. So is VPNs are safe means, yes, VPNs are safe. The second the letter is leaving your office, it should be the encrypted format so but nobody can able to decrypt and read the content is one way to secure it. Now let us come to the case of rumors of the dark web. So today, if you want to search who is Krishna Shastri, you will go and type it in the Google, you are going to get some information. But what you are searching is only 4% of the internet. and 96% of the internet is not really accessible to you. So that's where we try to call this 4% is popularly called surface web. Like Earth is having a crust, mantle, and core. What you are having is surface web. Below surface web, you are having something called as dark web. Below dark web, you are having something called as a deep web. So that is perfectly communication between two parties in an encrypted format, so that anybody can able to do the communication, others cannot read the content. So we try to call them as a peer-to-peer communication. For example, when I try to communicate over a public internet, somebody can able to read it. But I'm communicating in such a fashion where the data is completely encrypted and my machine is communicating with you so that in between nobody can able to intercept it. Then it is going to become a big dark website. So today it has become a completely non-public website where people are able to communicate via communication channels very secretly so that nobody can able to intercept and nobody can able to read the content. That is basically, remember, the dark web is working.
Thank you very much, sir. Can you suggest any book for independent directors to know about basic?
Sir, I can suggest there is a book called Beyond Security.
Yes, sir.
And this is a simple book written from for a management understanding, not too much of technology, but gives you a broad overview how companies can manage it. Please, maybe I'll text to Mr. Kuntu the title of the book with the detail you can buy and read it. It's a good one.
Sure.
So,
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. Very enlightening program. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. I think we could have continued more, but we have already exceeded more than half an hour than we could have. So the last question I will take up, it's Mr. Surya Jedigunta. And with that, we will try to close up our session. So Mr. Surya, over to you.
Good evening, everyone. This is Surya Jedigunta. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Guptaji. And my question is on ethical hacking. This question can be taken either by Krishna Shastri ji or Shivaram Krishnan ji. So are organizations looking at the risk management committees, looking at ethical hacking to see how vulnerable their organizations are in terms of identifying the possible threats and or any gaps so that they can save themselves from much more serious attacks. So my question is on that ethical hacking. So could you throw some light on that issues? Thank you.
Shiva, I would like to take, or shall I go ahead, Shiva?
you carry on, Krishna.
So, see, let me call it as something called, white hat hackers, because we call generally hackers as two categories, mainly two categories. One is called black hat and three is called white hat. Black hat fellows are very dangerous fellows, so they will do for money. White hat is a category where they try to break the system and they try to prove whether you are safe enough or not. So based on that, you can able to remember, implement the proper security, what are all the gaps, etc. are available. It means how you are supposed to visualize is, you have a door, main door to your house, you created a lock, you want to test it whether that lock can be broken or not. So you call one fellow came to your house taking your approval, they try to break it and they say, sir, it's not breakable, so you will be happy. Okay, you are secure enough. You are clear, sir? So that is what these ethical hackers are going to do. Ethical hackers are the persons who hack whether they can able to hack into a system or not. So it will build a confidence to, yes, my systems are safe enough or not. Right? Are you clear?
Yes.
But what problem we are facing it now today? This is a big, remember, all board of directors should understand it, because that is our mindset is a big problem here. What I observed is, when somebody is, remember, okay, there is X bank is there. Earlier, they hired the hackers, remember, to hack it, to verify it after taking the permission. So I can say ethical hackers are the one who's trying to hack into our systems after taking the permission from you. Please remember this point. Now, after taking permission from you, I did this ethical hacking. The bank said, sir, I will give you only 5,000 rupees, because they said that is only my budget for cybersecurity. Are you clear, sir?
Yes.
So next stage, what happened is, there are certain people who came, without informing you, they will try to hack into systems, identify some vulnerability, call your bank, Sir, I'm so identified a vulnerability in your system. So I'm a responsible disclosure person, responsible citizen of the country, and that people are popularly bug bounties. I heard about the word also called bug bounties. So the bank will pay 5,000 rupees or 10,000 rupees as a cash award. Nowadays, what is happening is our CISOs are sometimes become, because you being a board of director, for you to also take a class of CISOs. CISOs have become very clever. If any boy who comes to you and says, "Sir, this is a vulnerability," instead of awarding them or instead of rewarding them, they are filing cases against these boys. Why you scan my network without the knowledge? And they are filing the police cases also. Then what these boys are doing, if I sell to this bank, maximum I'll get 10,000 rupees. I'm ready to sell this vulnerability somewhere in the dark web, I can make $5,000 US.
Okay.
So today nobody is coming forward to report the bugs. They are selling on internet via dark web. Who is selling is very difficult. If I sell that vulnerability to somewhere in the dark web, 100 people are purchasing and 100 are trying to attack the bank systems. That's why
Hey, my colleague
remember.
Prakash, I'm sorry, I had an independent director board meeting. It just got over. Sorry for that. God's
Yeah.
spill over 20 minutes. Sorry for that.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Shastri-
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shurya. Thank you so much. And with this, I think, Dr. Gupta, would you like to have something more, or should we? Sir, over to you now, Dr. Gupta.
Yeah, I think nothing much from my side, especially after the experts speak, and they have substantially extended good toolkits for the independent directors to ponder upon and assimilate in terms of practice. And one thing which I like, considering and with my understanding on the maturity curve on this aspect, the responsiveness and consciousness needs to be increased, and that's the only way. See, when we want to ring fence the liabilities which we have as an outcome of the regulations, and these days, every second day, when I interact with independent directors, they have great concerns. Of course, I was having one question which probably I could not take up because of limitation of the time, and if this experts allow. Now, there is a concept of cyber insurance, which is very interesting to understand, specifically when we are discussing about liability insurance as far as the independent directors are concerned. So maybe if any one of the experts could guide us on the cyber insurance and how third-party arrangements could be made for protecting us to a certain extent on this.
Shiva, you are at the call? Okay. See, what the cyber insurance today said basically is a risk management approach. So what the organizations are looking at, what was the overall the cyber risk that is associated, point number one. Based on that, they try to mitigate by keeping a set of security control, that is called something called a risk mitigation. Then third is minus what is the risk appetite the organization is having it. And finally, transferring the risk in the form of something called service level agreements with the vendors, or maybe in the form of a cyber insurance. So what organizations today we are looking at is, we know cyber security is based on the risk management approach. So people are looking, even the cyber insurance is also one risk transfer or a risk mitigation approach as a part of that. And there are a lot of companies are coming forward. They are coming and issuing the cyber insurance based on, remember, how much premium you are supposed to take it, etc. Depends upon how much security currently you are implementing it. So today the best way to remember to transfer the risk or to mitigate the risk is only in the form of a cyber insurance. So that is a very good approach. Organizations are adopting it.
Thank you so much, Shastri Saab, for a very crisp and informative answer to have our understanding. Over to you, Mr. Kundu. I'm done from my side. I have asked my question as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. I know a couple of more questions are there in the pipe, but I would request please bear with us. We are already 45 minutes overshooting the time. And I take this opportunity to thank Shastri, you and Shiva for responding to the invitation from Indian Ministry of Corporate Affairs. Last few sentences probably I would like to express. Over a period of time, being associated in this Center for Independent Directors, we have been receiving requests that there should be certain technical discussions which are disruptive in nature and that may influence the board. And while thinking on that, we thought probably this would be the best topic to pick it up to begin with. And with that endeavor, we have organized this first series in the technical domain to a certain extent. And with the presence of these two stalwarts from industry, and that too in the specific domain of cybersecurity, Krishna Shastri, you and Shiva Ramakrishna, it's my honor to express thanks and gratitude to both of you for taking your time and devoting this quality time with us and deliver on such an emerging topic. This topic, I know, because I'm also from a little bit of technical background, having spent more than 20-30 years in different domains of technicals, it is close to my heart. And I'm very happy that this topic was so interestingly presented, so lucidly presented, such that 5 years, 6 years before, or even in that time period, which was supposed to now come to the board level. We are talking about agenda in the board. What a transformation in the last couple of years. Thank you so much on behalf of this Center for Independent Directors and Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs. Clap to you, Shastri and Krishna. Thank you so much. I also take this opportunity to thank Dr. Gupta, Dr. Neeraj Gupta, the veteran in corporate governance. Salute to you, sir, your guidance, and for moderating this session and spearheading the threads for the discussion today. My best wishes and thanks to all the participants for this joining and participating here. I hope this session will trigger many, many more questions and thoughts in your mind, and consider this cybersecurity as a business risk and align yourself accordingly. Thank you all. Thank you so much, and wish you a very good evening. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
With this, we close this session here. Thank you.
Thank you to all of you for sparing your valuable time, and thank you, Mr. Shastri and Shivrama, for an excellent session and knowledge enhancement. I personally stands benefited from this, and I'm sure you all have enjoyed. Be with us and log into our next program. We'll keep you posted. Thank you. Had a great evening. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.